So I would like to start by coming to the by saying that humans have left no place on this earth untouched and have significantly altered the Earth's ecosystems. This has prompted the study of the human component in ecology and the spaces they occupy. This has given rise to the field of urban ecology, which is the study of the urban environments. As the population increases there in the urban areas, the built infrastructure also needs to increase. This prompts a change in the size, density and heterogeneity of the cities, and this can be simply said to be the urbanization. Now, as the cities grow, a serious concern is how they expand into the surrounding areas. Cities usually do not tend to follow a very concentric growth and they grow very irregularly. The urban core gets saturated and there is exploitation of habitats at the urban core as well as suburban and the rural areas, which leads to exploitation, which is basically the exploitation of natural habitats. This leads to fragmentation and habitat degradation, and this simply can be said to be the urban sprawl. Moving from this, we come to the urban biodiversity. The urban landscape is not only occupied by humans but also by many other species, and this is the urban biodiversity. Many studies have looked into the urban biodiversity, its documentation, and suggested challenges and strategies for its better management. Now we are going to look at the urban landscape, and I have broadly classified the urban landscape into two major categories. First being the urban green spaces, and these urban green spaces include remnant patches of vegetation, tree belts along the roads, wastelands, institutional grounds, and many such areas mentioned in these green boxes. And then there is the urban grey spaces. These are mostly the built environment or the artificial environment, which includes roads, buildings, plazas, malls, and so basically built and artificial structures. With this I come to my study, which is making the urban matrix matter, in which I have looked at the characteristics of the informal community of the urban matrix and related it to the urban green spaces of their urban. So why would one want to study the urban matrix? Firstly, research has majorly focused on urban green spaces and how the impact of these urban and in the context of the matrix, how the matrix habitats influence the green spaces. They are not looked at specifically the biodiversity of the urban matrix, but how these matrix habitats will influence the urban green spaces. There is need to analyze the urban matrix, and this is very relevant because the matrix holds significant biodiversity, which is shown by many papers. Also, the urban green spaces and the urban matrix are interconnected. There is permeability between the urban green spaces and the urban matrix, which allows movement of many different species, and this has been recorded by many different studies. Also, the matrix biodiversity, as I mentioned earlier, is underrepresented. There has been very less research globally into this urban matrix, and in India it has not received much attention, and there are very few studies. So with this I come to the objective of my study, which was firstly to determine the features of the avifaunal community in the urban matrix of Dehradun. To answer this, I looked at the richness, abundance, density and composition of the avifaunal community in the matrix. Secondly, to examine the avifaunal community in relation to the urban green spaces, and to answer this, I looked at the richness, density and overlap in the species in the avifaunal community for the urban green space and the urban matrix. So my study site was Dehradun city. I followed a previous study was done in this similar landscape, which focused on the urban green spaces. This was done by Kaushik et al. 2020. So in the map, the large green spaces which you can see are the urban green spaces, and the black dots around it represent my sampling points. The data of the urban green spaces was taken from Kaushik et al. Study. So my methodology was for the bird surveys. My sampling period was from March to April 2021. I placed variable radius point counts around the urban green spaces at 50 and 250 meters away from the urban green spaces. It was made sure that there was at least 200 meters distance between each point count station. It was followed by, at each point count there was 10 minutes of sampling, which included 3 minutes of acclimatization time and 7 minutes of data collection. For analyzing my patterns in the matrix, I first did habitat characterization around each point in a 100-meter radius. This was done by using Google Earth imagery and classifying the habitats or the land cover types into 4-5 major categories: built up, green cover, open areas, scrubland and agriculture. This was for the landscape heterogeneity was calculated. Landscape heterogeneity around each point was again calculated in the 100-meter buffer using the patches of a Shannon diversity for the patches of the different habitat types. The major habitat types around each point were then introduced in a clustering algorithm, which clustered my sampling units based on the dominant habitat type present at that particular sampling point. Estimated species richness was calculated using the improved curve estimator by Chiu et al. Density estimation was done in distance software for the 7.3. I used non-metric multidimensional scaling to look at the differences in the bird community composition of the matrix. Linear modeling approaches were used to quantify the impact of the habitat, land cover types on the bird community matrix. For the comparison of the urban green spaces and the urban matrix, I plotted a simple Venn diagram to look at the difference, to look at the overlap between the communities of the urban matrix and urban green spaces, and simple box plots to look at the difference in density and richness. So now coming to my results. 3,775 individuals belonging to 81 species were recorded in the study area. The top 5 species were feral pigeon, rosebill parakeet, red-vented bulbul, common myna, and jungle babbler. These accounted for 41.67% abundance of the total abundance. The clustering analysis based on the habitat types resulted in 5 major clusters being formed based on a dominant habitat type. And this table shows the 109 sampling points distributed into based on the dominant habitat type according to, so they are clustered into their dominant habitat types. And this was used for further analysis for the habitat-wise classification of habitat-wise characteristics of the community. Species richness, the accumulation curve showed that built up at the highest number of species, followed by scrubland, green cover, open area, and agriculture. The curve does not show saturation because the curve does not show saturation because the sampling was not enough to fully represent the species richness or different habitats in the matrix. And one of the reasons I could not do multiple replicates because of the pandemic restrictions. The estimated species richness showed that for all the habitat types except green cover, the observed and estimated species richness was almost similar, but in green cover there was a bigger difference in the observed and estimated species richness, and this can be accounted to the fact that these plots of green cover showed more rare species, and these species were majorly habitat specialists. They were not found in any of the other habitats, whereas across the habitats there were some common generalist species seen. Because of the presence of more number of rare species, the estimated species can be included. Abundance and evenness. So in the 4 habitat categories, agriculture, green cover, open area, and scrubland, the community was almost similar in their evenness and abundance. But if you look at built-up areas, it showed a highly uneven community, and also some species were dominating the community by greater margin. The density plot shows that green cover had the lowest density among the habitats, and this is counterintuitive to our thinking. But this green cover is of the urban matrix and not of a pristine forest. Here, there was, as I explained before, there was a lot of rare species, and they were only seen once or twice, and the numbers were also pretty low. So this can account for the lower densities, but in the other habitats, more generalist species were observed. Their abundance relatively high because of the presence of built up areas, more human interactions and more human effects. The species composition ordination graph shows that the habitat, the plots of green cover were clearly separated from the other habitats, and this is due to the presence, as I mentioned before, of these woodland raptors, hornbills and woodpeckers, which were only found in the green cover plots. But in the other 4 habitat types, there were a lot of generalist species like the feral pigeon, red-necked pigeon, and common myna seal. So this can account for this. Basically, is moving towards biotic homogenization in these plots in the other habitat types. Now coming to the habitat, boreal species richness, it was seen that as the percentage of open area and scrubland increased, the species richness also showed a clear increase. But for as the percentage of built-up increased, you could see that there was a moderate level of peaking, and the richness decreased as the percentage of built-up area increased. This is in line with the intermediate disturbance hypothesis, which many studies have also tried to look at, and say that at moderate to medium levels of disturbance, the species richness of urban areas does show peaking, because these areas show a greater habitat heterogeneity. There is more space available for them, and the disturbance is not so much that many of these adapter species, urban adapter and avoider species, they can also come and coexist in these low to moderate disturbance areas. For density, it was seen that as the percentage of scrubland in the matrix increased, there was a clear increase. Landscape heterogeneity showed a very showed clear positive influence with the density. Percentage of built-up has shown in many studies that the density decreases as built-up increases, and for the percentage of green cover, as I said before, that there were a habitat, as I said before, regarding the rare species, and the density being, so the numbers being too low, hence the density also was low. Now we come to the comparison of the urban matrix and the green spaces. In this, the Venn diagram shows that there were 64 species which overlap between the urban green space and the urban matrix. 50 species were unique to the urban matrix, and these are your habitat specialists, or these are these urban avoiders which would not want to come into large amount of human disturbance or build-up, hence they were only found in these urban green spaces. The 17 species which are unique to the matrix can be accounted for by the fact that the sampling was carried out over different years, and also I might have seen some species which are rare, which may have come opportunistically in my sampling. So the comparative species richness shows that the richness in the matrix is definitely higher than the richness in the the richness in the urban green space is definitely higher than the richness in the matrix. This is because there is more habitat heterogeneity and stability in the urban green spaces, where they can occupy more habitats inside there, and hence the species richness can also be higher. In terms of density also, it was a same state where the urban matrix showed very low densities of birds, whereas the urban matrix, the urban green space clearly showed a higher density, where it supports higher density. The conclusions from my study: the urban matrix of Dehradun does show significant habitat diversity and a good proportion of green cover. There is a substantially diverse aeriform assemblage. Built-up areas are clearly shown to have a negative influence on the bird richness and density, and this has been corroborated by many studies. The landscape heterogeneity of Dehradun's matrix has a positive influence on bird density, and this is good because the urban matrix is not completely inhospitable. And you can see here that the bird species richness of the green spaces is greater than the richness in the urban matrix, but this does not mean that the urban matrix of Dehradun is inhospitable. It does have a substantial bird diversity, and this urban matrix needs more research attention in the future. I would like to thank these people, especially Ruby ji, Shweta, Vidya, and Anjali. questions.
Questions?
It's a nice study which you have done first time in Dehradun Valley. My two questions I have. Do you think your 50 points for catching heterogeneity in the urban matrix is adequate? That's first question. Second thing, I have seen you know most of this is structural. Structural means that what plant species they have got, like especially Dehradun Valley have a lot of fig trees. Okay, so how have you taken any account of those species, the tree species in your green urban matrix? Because I have seen in the Matawala Bagh, which is in the heart of the Saranpur Chowk, and lot of bird species they come like hornbill and like that one. So I don't know whether how you try to capture those heterogeneity in the smaller spaces of those, and particularly the tree species which are conducive for bringing more diverse bird species.
So thank you for the question. And so I had a total of 109 points in the matrix. Not 50, I had 109 points in the urban variants of Dehradun. And coming to the second point about the vegetational diversity which you mentioned, I had planned to look at the vegetational diversity, and it was part of one of my objectives submitted in the proposal, but it could not be fulfilled because I had kept the vegetation sampling towards the end of my, almost towards the end of my bird data collection, and because of the pandemic restriction at the time I couldn't collect that, so I will drop the objective. But yes, studies have shown that vegetation is a very important aspect to look at when it comes to explaining the diversity, not only in the matrix but also in the green spaces. The vegetational heterogeneity does influence how which species occupy and in how much numbers they can occupy. So yes, the vegetational diversity aspect can be looked at in the future. Sir, I hope I answered the question.
So it would have been interesting if you have mentioned the area, like a steady area in terms of like how many are and you could have made a relationship with the number of points in the area of the area. So you have now if somebody asks this particular question is are these species because of the matrix or because of the green species? So what's important?
So both are equally important, I would say, because you cannot have these 64 species colonizing these urban green spaces without the presence of a hospitable matrix. So if you were to consider an island vegetative theory for urban areas, that would not work very well. Because if you say that these green spaces are like islands and the matrix is not suitable, then even not only for birds but for many other taxa, it would be not possible to find that. So once they are inside, then there will be no more movement in and out, which actually adds to the species richness of both the matrix and the urban green spaces. So we looking at the island vegetative view to saying that yes, 64 species, which is more important, both are equally important. And both need to be managed and conserved equally. Yes.
Last.
Yes, sir.
Because of this urban matrix, if we allow this urban matrix to do you think the abundance of the common species will increase? And that abundance of the common species will have a competitive advantage for the species in urban green spaces, which will result in the decline of specific species or the rare species which are using those
Yes, sir. You are right. You are very right in saying that cities are growing. There is so the matrix will grow, and as this matrix grows, as this keeps on sprawling outwards, there are going to be more and more green spaces formed. Which there are going to be more and more green spaces formed, which are as you can see WI, FRI. These are all these green spaces formed because of the spread of Dehradun. And it is, so these common species which you refer to, in my study also the common species like feral pigeon, common minna, these can be simply urban exploiters. So they grow very well as the urbanization increases. So their numbers grow higher as the urbanization increases. there are urban adapters which work well with moderate levels of urbanization, and these avoiders, which you mentioned, will go extinct. Yes, as the sprawl increases, as the number of these common species increases, these urban avoiders, these rare species which require particular habitat to survive, will decrease, and the richness will decrease. So these few species like common man of agriculture are causing a comparative pressure also on these urban adapters and urban avoiders.
So is there a need when you look at urban ecology? Is there a need to look at this as a different yardstick of comparing density, diversity, then comparing the presence of the layer and
Yes, so people have looked at guild richnesses, so they are trying to classify them based on nesting guilds, foraging guilds, and also these urban guilds, they said exploiters, and also looking at a finer scale will definitely help in teasing about these differences. Yes, I couldn't do it much because I only had one round or something, and the species also were, I could not look into the guild richness that well and couldn't explain it that well. So I did look into it, but I couldn't explain it that well, hence I left it out.
Jason, my comment is relating to see these urban matrices that you are talking about is spread across the landscape from what you have shown in the map. Okay. Now, I feel that in your overall summarization, the site-specific occurrence of certain species is lost, and it is getting generalized. For example, it is getting generalized. For example, if you take FRI campus, that particular patch, you are considering that as an urban matrix. You are considering that as an urban green space.
FRI is an urban green space outside as the urban green space.
Right. Now, if you look at FRI, the habitat connectivity with the hills, okay, that is going to influence what species is there in that area. Many of these are migrants which are moving down. That's going to be there in your data. A little beyond that, there would be certain species that will occur, okay? But there would be another site. See, what I'm basically trying to say is that if you take a site which is very far from FRI, say right in Kantagar, many of those species would not occur. What you have there in the urban green space there in FRI, just taking some 100 meters or 200 meters away from that does not really explain to you the urban matrix.
So I have taken points. So this is the FRI campus here. We have not taken FRI as the
Right.
space, but these points, this is near Nagar, this is near the core of the city, and these are towards the fringes. Yes, I have looked at that, and also while looking at the habitat correlates, we did take distance from the intact forest patches, the nearest and the largest into consideration while running the linear models, but they did not come out as significant variable, significant in explaining the richness and density. We also looked at the distance from the urban green space and the size of urban green space. Both did not come as significant. So I accounted for the distance from the green, from the forest patches towards the Shivalik hills, from the Masuri side and from the Raleigh side. We accounted that distance and it did not come significant in the analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, then let's do a relaxation.